en este año. este año, el 2020, tenemos la oportunidad de transformar nuestro futuro político. Tenemos la oportunidad de elegir jueces que van a restaurar equilibrio y justicia en nuestros tribunales. Tenemos la oportunidad de arreglar los sistemas rotos que hacen daño a la gente más vulnerable. Tenemos la oportunidad de elegir jueces que tienen empatía. Si trabajamos juntos y nos unimos con una visión colectiva, podemos recobrar nuestro Estado. Vamos a ganar porque tenemos que ganar. Tenemos que parar el odio, la inaccesibilidad y el sufrimiento. Tenemos que asegurar que todos tengan las oportunidades de adelantar. Nuestra causa y nuestro movimiento tiene que ver con la restauración de la justicia y la expansión de la oportunidad para todos. No podemos llegar a esta meta a menos que trabajemos juntos. Si no trabajamos juntos para traer cambios permanentes a Texas, no podremos llegar al fin para continuar formando el movimiento más grande que hemos visto en Texas. Les pedimos que se unan a nuestra pelea histórica. Juntos vamos a crear un estado donde todos podemos tener una mejor vida para nuestros niños. Juntos salvaremos a Texas y en turno a nuestro país. Los invito a que se unan a nosotros. Muchas gracias.
Hello, and thank you for being with us this afternoon, everyone. I'm Rafael Benavides, and I'm the Spanish Press Secretary here at the Texas Democratic Party. I'm so excited to welcome you all to this week's Town Hall Thursday, where we will hear from some of the Texas Democrats who are leading our efforts to engage and empower Latinos across Texas. On that note, I'm proud to introduce you to our panelists today. Joining us is Manny Garcia, Executive Director of the Texas Democratic Party. Manny has a proven record of leading one of the state's most hard-hitting communications teams at the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, the One Texas PAC, and the Office of State Representative Trey Martin Fisher. Manny Garcia joined the Texas Democratic Party in 2013. In 2019, he became Executive Director, leading efforts to turn Texas blue in 2020 by defeating Trump and making Democratic gains in local elections. We're also joined by Darcy Caballero, our Voter Assistance Hotline Director, charged with recruiting, training, and activating an army of democracy warriors, also known as volunteers, who have been answering voter questions over the phone since January. She came to us from the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, where she had a focus on voting rights legislation and brings several years of experience as a volunteer coordinator as well. Manny and Darcy, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So we'll go ahead and get to the questions. I want to ask both of you. We'll start first with Manny. Manny, why did you decide to get into this line of work?
Well, I had a bit of an awkward pathway into what we do right now. I started as an education policy expert at the University of Texas at Austin. Got tired of how frustrating it was to get things done in academia, the pace of academia, and why I loved the work. I really wanted to do something with more action. So I went to the Texas State Legislature, worked for Trey Martinez Fisher from San Antonio, and he is a firebrand Texas Democrat. And we were, throwing punches left and right. Became a policy expert there and got to work in the communications shop and do a lot of great things in redistricting and voter ID and in that fight. But frustrated with the world under the pink dome and knowing that we needed to make more change, and frustrated at the pace and making sure that I wanted to make a big impact. And so in 2013, I got recruited to become the communications director for the Texas Democratic Party. We had the huge filibuster with Wendy Davis and Leticia Van de Putte, and there was so much energy, so much excitement, and a new party was growing. I got convinced to come on over and join the team. And I say that my journey has been from academic to policy person to political communications hack. And all of the while, it's been just a frustration of where our state is and why we need to make a difference for our families. And I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. I grew up in Bronzeville, Texas. And I was blessed to have a street with a paved road. I was blessed to have, running water. And that's not something that, all Texans can say. That's something that just a few blocks away from me, there was a colonia, and some of my best friends grew up there. And I was blessed to have two parents with two jobs, and growing up in this, lower middle class lifestyle in the Rio Grande Valley. And I saw so many of my friends and my folks go through the struggles that they went through every day, and you do not forget that. And where I come from, you give back. And as you go through life, you figure out how you can do more to make sure that people's lives are better. And it just so happens that in politics, you get to do work that fundamentally changes people's lives and changes the world. And we are very privileged to be in this kind of position, to do this kind of work. And it's incredibly exciting to do it, and especially to do it right now at a moment in time where we are set to make history.
Thank you, Manny. And being from the border, I know exactly what you're talking about. So it's great to have you on board with us. Darcy, I want to ask you the same question. So how did you get into this line of work?
Yeah, so I've always kind of been very interested in politics. Even as a kid, I was just very fascinated by politics, followed it, was a huge Obama fan. I think my first phone banking shift was hidden away from my parents. They were, I think, away for the afternoon or something. And I picked up the phone. I'd heard that you could call voters in other states. And I was like, I need to do this. 13-year-old me was very proud to be a proud Obama supporter, and just kind of carried that sort of mentality. And ever since I was a kid, I was always pro same-sex marriage. I was pro-choice. I had very strong values that I knew that I believed in, despite how conservative the area that I grew up in was. And so being very strong in those convictions, I think, kind of carried me throughout my years. And it's funny that you mentioned, Manny, that Leticia Van de Putte and the filibuster and everything, because I think for a lot of people of my generation, that was our moment of activation. We were fascinated by politics. We were very involved in it. And it was finally our chance to really do something that mattered, right? And so I got immediately started. I did my first internship with Anise Parker. I did another internship with Battle Run, Texas. And then slowly just kind of made my way to Austin. When I saw that filibuster, I knew I needed to go to Austin. I was in Houston. I was at the University of Houston. I transferred that following summer, and I was back in UT. I was interning at the Travis County Democratic Party, and that, I guess you could say that the rest is history, right? And I think for me, one of the most important things has always been voting, right? I've always seen voting as the baseline of what we should all be doing. If anything, we should all be doing voting plus, right? And what's really fascinating about this job, and what really kind of drew me to it, being a vote assistance hotline director, was that I had the ability to use both this weird amount of knowledge I had regarding voting rights and voter registration and all that stuff, as well as my volunteer coordination experience and how good I am with volunteers, basically, and put that together to really provide a very needed resource for voters of all kinds all across the state, right? And while I know that voting isn't going to be the thing that saves everything, if you can't vote, and if there are barriers and even things to just lack of voter education that are keeping people from being able to vote, that is going to keep us from doing any amount of systemic change that we're looking to make, right? So protests, all of that, I am very supportive of it. And at the very least, what we need to do is at least have people in power who fully represent us, are listening to us. And the only way to do that is by voting.
You can make a great point, Darcy. And now we have a great opportunity to do that, to organize and to have that power for Latinos. Manny, I want to ask you, so how is the Texas Democratic Party engaging and empowering Latinos across Texas to register to vote and turn out on election day?
Yeah, it starts off with an understanding of who it is that Texas is, who is the Texas Democratic Coalition, and fully embracing that and being unapologetic about that. Trey Martinez Fisher, when I worked with him, used to say, the Latino community, we got to understand that we are 40% of Texas, and we're going to start acting like it. And when you start acting like it, you start demanding like it. You start doing things differently to make sure that your voice is heard. And I think at the Texas Democratic Party, we now understand that the Latino community is the core of the coalition. The Latino community, African American community, Asian American Pacific Islander community, voters of conscience, these are our voters. And so if you're going to engage them, it's not a niche program. It is the program. It's the foundation of the program. So every time we say we have phone banks and text banks and we're calling folks, we're calling Latinos. We're not calling somebody else. We're calling our coalition. And there's a fundamental change that needed to happen at the state level to make sure that we were doing this right. What a lot of people don't know is the Texas Democratic Party is the data infrastructure of over 800 campaigns and progressive organizations across Texas. Every phone call you're getting, every mail piece you're getting, it is coming from the same data source. It's coming from ours. And our data team is a rock star team that really analyzes voter behavior and does the best it can to target who is most likely to be a Democrat. Well, when we're advising campaigns on who you need to talk to in order to win, we have changed the way we thought about that. We now build our logic on saying the people you need to talk to first are the Democratic Coalition. You need to talk to Latinos and African Americans first, and those folks build the foundation of your campaign, and then you go from there with a strong foundation to reach out to additional communities instead of the other way around. And I think that fundamental difference in logic is what makes Texas different than many other campaigns in the country, and what really does sort of honor the value set that we come with. We are an unapologetically Black, Brown-led state party. Cliff Walker, our deputy executive director, is Black and from San Antonio. I was from the Valley. Our chair, Gilberto Hinojosa, is Latino. Our vice chair, Dr. Carla Brady, is African American. There are very few of these kinds of leadership teams in the country. And I think we all said that on our watch, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we campaign the right way, and that we advise campaigns to grow and operate this way.
Darcy, so in a state as gerrymandered as this one, how are Texas Democrats assuring the Latino community that their vote matters and that voting is the best way to change the systems that continue to disenfranchise our communities?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Kind of how I said before, I think that the change in the system can't come unless we have the right people in power who, again, are listening to us and are paying attention to the needs and aren't just assuming that Latinos are one issue voters, right? We don't only care about immigration. We care about public safety. We care about our neighborhood schools. We care about health insurance. We care about a lot of things. We care about a lot of things that many families care about, and ensuring that this messaging goes across and that folks understand that we are hearing them and we are here for them and we have their back, and we are here to support them. Whether it's at the hotline level, whether it's giving them the information they need to go out and vote, we are making sure that Latinos know that we are not taking their vote for granted. I think is the other really important thing to emphasize is that, kind of like Manny said, this is like, we are the coalition. We are the majority. We are 40% of the state, and ensuring that they know that they are empowered, right? That we have this power to change things is so important. And making sure that folks get the right information at the hotline, which I'll plug the number 1-844-TX-VOTES. That's the kind of stuff that's going to help make sure that the Latinos understand that we have their back. We are here for them. We are going to help them, and we're going to help make the state as great as we can make it. And all of that, starts right at the ballot box.
Great. And changing gears just a bit, I'll go ahead and ask both of you, but I'll start with you, Darcy. What is a tradition in your family that you love and you want to share with everyone listening?
I think this is a pretty common one, but coming from, so my parents are both immigrants. My mom is from Monterrey, Mexico, and my dad is from Comayagua, Honduras. And so Christmas is a pretty big tradition in our family. We're kind of separate from the rest of our family. The rest of my family basically lives in the home countries. And so we've kind of had to create our own little tradition. And usually it's tamales. My mom is one of the best cooks in the world. I have often said that she should go on MasterChef. She doesn't listen to me. She's a little too humble, but she makes the best Mexican tamales and Central American tamales. So at Christmas, we get both. And an extension of that tradition is that one of my best friends, who is Anglo, she's white, her family lives down the street. They live in the next neighborhood over. And every Christmas Day, I bring over tamales, and it's kind of like a cultural exchange. And so they get to learn more about our culture and eat our food, and just, enjoy and have a good time.
That's awesome. And it also sounds very delicious. Manny, I'd like to ask you the same thing. What is a tradition in your family that you want to share with everyone listening?
You know, it's big. It's big family, and it's gathering, and it's being together. You know, when I grew up in the Valley, going across the border to Matamoros was a regular thing. My mother was born in Matamoros. My father was born in Portisville, Texas, and he actually he was a U.S. citizen born in Portisville, Texas, but went to school in Mexico. And then they both got married and immigrated over. And you know, this is a common story. You live on both sides of the border. And so growing up, it was every single weekend going and grilling with aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents, and being wrapped and embraced in family. And that's just foundational to what you experience sort of growing up all the time. It was really kind of just a different world when I moved to Austin, Texas. And I moved to go to UT and become a Longhorn. And my wife is from South Texas, also from Bronzeville, same high school. And being over here, we always kind of thought, oh, maybe we're going to go back to the Valley in a couple of years, and just kind of like yearn for that community and environment again. And you know, now we have found to build new community and to build, you know, new connections here and bring some of the Valley to Austin and you know, make that just different. But it's got to be food and community and connection, and that's just deep rooted. And you know, maybe it meant that when I was in college, you still had to go back home and drive 5 hours like every other weekend, and there was no excuses, right? Like you still had to be there. But that was part of the beauty of all of it.
Awesome. So going back real quick, and for our last question, I want to start off with you, Manny. How can folks listening get involved in our Latino outreach initiative?
Yeah, I think you know, reach out to txdemocrats.org. You know, you can text Texas to 21333. And as Darcy has said already, get your voter information at mytexasvotes.com and on our hotline if you ever run into any issues, 1-844-TX-VOTES. So there's many ways to connect and to engage with what's going on. Obviously, follow us online. Follow us on all the social media channels and check out all of the wonderful content that is being developed, and have fun with it and engage and ask questions and share with friends and family. And I guess I'll say that point too, that as you see what we do, question us, challenge us, demand more of us. That is what we have to do, because we should always get better and we should always do more. But then also, I hope take from what's going on in the state and take from what you see on our channels and what we are talking about, and have really tough conversations with your friends and family. Because at the end of the day, what changes the vote is not what we say in Austin, Texas, or what someone says in Washington, D.C., or what you hear on MSNBC. What changes the vote is a fundamental conversation of two people talking about the kind of future that they want, and your family member is going to trust you. You know, that comadre vote is going to be powerful, right? That aunt vote is going to be powerful. That's what makes a difference. So see it all and see what we're doing and see that we are fighting for healthcare. We are fighting for education. We're fighting for jobs. We're fighting for fundamental things that change people's lives. But then turn that around and talk to a friend about it.
Awesome. So as we're sharing the tamales en carne asada and arroz y frijoles, we want to go ahead and talk about what's at stake as well in this election. Darcy, I also want to give you the opportunity to let those who are watching know how they can be further involved in Latino outreach.
Yeah. And yeah, just to, I think, obviously seconding everything Manny says. And then on top of that, poll workers are still very much in need, in areas where our people live, right? Those usually tend to be the ones that polling locations close because no one signed up to be a poll worker, right? And that's a paid position. It's $8 to $10 an hour. And it's helping voters check in. It's, making sure that they have what they need to vote. And then aside from that, we are also looking for more Spanish volunteers on the hotline. So if you are a Spanish speaker, go ahead and email me at darcy@txdemocrats.org. And we can definitely get you up on the hotline. That's definitely a huge priority for us. I think that being able to bring a live assistance in the language that our folks can be most comfortable in is going to be one of the most helpful things that we can do to make sure that folks are able to cast that ballot that counts. Because at the end of the day, one of the biggest barriers to voting is just voter education, not knowing where to go, not knowing when the deadline is to submit your application. And so we are more than happy to provide all of that information in both English and Spanish.
Well, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much to our speakers for participating in this week's Town Hall Thursday. And thanks to all your efforts, we're going to ensure that Latino voters feel empowered to register to vote and turn out on Election Day. Thanks again, everyone watching, and we'll see you next week.